The early 2000s produced an abundance of hard rock supergroups. Most, if not all, of the members of these supergroups came from bands who were popular in the 1990s, struggling to maintain a new image, relevancy, and success a decade after grunge's popularity. Some of these supergroups, notably Audioslave, A Perfect Circle, and Velvet Revolver, found significant success in the new decade, with all three bands maintaining relevancy in a similar, albeit not as popular way as Stone Temple Pilots, Tool, and Soundgarden did the decade prior. However, other bands were not so lucky. Despite releasing interesting or critically acclaimed albums, bands such as Army of Anyone, Dark New Day, and Spies for Darwin did not resonate with audiences, nor find the same success as their alma mater bands. Among these failed supergroups included Godsmack and Ugly Kid Joe amalgamation, Another Animal. In this video, we will explore the history behind Another Animal's birth, the type of music they produced, and the death of the band. Much like Alter Bridge's Creed with a different singer, and Tantric was Days of the New with a different singer, so too was Another Animal Godsmack with a different singer. While that is not to say all six bands listed sound exactly the same, they don't. It is more so to stress how in many of these bands only one member was changed, while the instrumental core remained the same. 4 out of 5 members of Another Animal are or were in Godsmack. Lead guitarist Tony Rambolla, bassist Robbie Merrill, and drummer Shannon Larkin are longtime members, and rhythm guitarist Lee Richards was initially Godsmack's sole guitarist before Tony Rambolla replaced him. The major outliers being singer Whitfield Crane, who is best known as the lead singer of 90s alternative rock band Ugly Kid Joe, in addition to brief stints in other bands here and there. While Godsmack is seen as a quote-unquote band in the traditional sense, it's clear based off writing credits and testimony from the instrumental members that Godsmack is primarily Sully Erna's vision, and he has creative control on almost every aspect of the band's career. For the band's debut record, Awake and 4, songwriting seems to be split evenly between Erna and the other members. On Faceless, The Other Side, and When Legends Rise, Sully Erna has the majority of songwriting credits, with him being the only member of Godsmack to have any writing credits on When Legends Rise. I was unable to find specific writing credits for The Oracle and 1000 HP. Regardless, it's clear Godsmack as a band has more in common structurally with Chad Kroger's Nickelback or Gavin Rossdale's Bush than a band like Stone Temple Pilots or Korn, where the instrumental members write the music and the lead singer writes the lyrics and melodies. Whether this is a positive or a negative aspect of Godsmack is subjective. However, it is clear by Another Animal's debut album, as well as commentary from Robbie Merrill, Shannon Larkin, and Tony Rambolla, that Another Animal was a much-needed creative outlet for the instrumental members of Godsmack, and was collaborative on a level that Godsmack never achieved. Another Animal's origins came after the writing session for Godsmack's 4th album, appropriately titled 4. Rambolla, Merrill, and Larkin had written well over 40 songs for the 4 album, of which Sully Erna only used 5 of these songs for the final track list. With an abundance of material that the instrumental members felt great pride in, they decided to release these songs under a separate moniker. They recruited original Godsmack axeman Lee Richards as the rhythm guitarist and completed the project with Whitfield Crane on vocals. Thus, Another Animal hits the studio and begins work on their debut album to be released under Godsmack's label Universal Records. Supposedly, Sully Erna became incredibly angry at the news of this. Shannon Larkin would give interviews as Damage Control and stress that Another Animal is not meant to be a backhanded statement against Erna, and Erna supposedly expressed pride in their success and gave them his blessing. However, in 2014, while giving an interview with Revolver, Erna expressed that he felt as though Another Animal was an attempt at competing with Godsmack, as opposed to a creative outlet. Robbie Merrill would later say Godsmack's near breakup was around the time Another Animal began touring. While Godsmack never fell victim to the publicized internal drama other bands such as Slipknot or Five Finger Death Punch faced, it is evident there were many unresolved disagreements regarding creativity in the band, and that Sully Erna felt threatened at the idea of his bandmates collaborating with another singer. Which now brings us to Another Animal's sound. While most of the ideas for this album came from 4, it is important to know Another Animal's self-titled album does have a sound that is independent from Godsmack, while simultaneously retaining the elements of Godsmack's songwriting. A good comparison would be how Army of Anyone's debut has songs which very much sound like the DeLeo brothers' trademark style, but it sounds independent from a Stone Temple Pilots album. Another Animal is a quintessential post-grunge album, with the overall sound being very reminiscent of Alice in Chains or the heavier material by Stone Temple Pilots. In fact, one of my personal descriptors for this album has always been the music of Alice in Chains meets the melodies of Scott Weiland. However, again, I must stress that Another Animal is not merely a clone of any of the aforementioned bands. The album's sound is consistently hard rock with a few experimental or acoustic breaks in between. Examples of boundary-pushing elements by Godsmack standards are seen in songs such as The Beast Within, Black Coffee Blues, and Save Me, which feature rhythm guitarist Lee Richards taking over for lead vocals in place of Whitfield Crane. Another point of interest is the song The Thin Line, which features drummer Shannon Larkin on lead vocals. The song is a hardcore punk rock track displaying Larkin's surprising range, not only as a singer but as an artist as well. Songs like Interlude and Fade Away illustrate the softer themes of the band's capabilities, reflecting on the melodies of those seen on the other side. Lastly, the blend between Whitfield Crane's alternative rock vocals with Godsmack's alternative metal sound makes a surprisingly coherent form of grunge. Songs such as Distance Lines, Left Behind, Amends, and hit single Broken Again have more in common with material from Jerry Cantrell, as opposed to, say, Disturbed, 3 Days Grace, or Stained. Had the album been released at any point in the 1990s, or from the years 2000 to 2004, I believe it could have been much more successful. Which brings me to my final point. Another Animal was a commercial disaster. With little to no promotion from Godsmack's label, as well as poor turnout from fans at the record stores, at a time when albums could still go platinum, the band utterly flopped. Even high-profile tours opening for artists such as Alter Bridge and Stone Temple Pilots failed to make a difference. The only successful aspect from the band was lead single Broken Again, which became a top 10 hit on modern rock radio. However, it was clear that Another Animal was not the success it had to be for the band, and with that, Rambola, Merrill, and Larkin would reunite with Erna for Godsmack's fifth album, The Oracle. Erna would pursue a solo career and release his debut album, Avalon, that same year. With the downtime from Godsmack, Another Animal was entertained as an idea once more. They would go on to write Fall of Rome and release it as a single, Larkin stating that should Fall of Rome chart well in the same way Broken Again did, then the label would give them permission to write a sophomore album. Unfortunately, Fall of Rome peaked at number 39 on rock radio, and all talks of a second album ceased. Crane, Richards, and Larkin would later reunite to record an acoustic album, World Stand Still, comprised of ideas Crane and Richards put together on Another Animal's first tour. Whitfield Crane continues to play songs from Another Animal at his live and acoustic shows. I was 12 years old when Another Animal's debut album was released. At the time, I had zero interest in music, and it would not be until 3 years later that I would hear the song Broken Again on the radio. I became a fan of the band in 2015, well past the point of the band's chances of getting back together seeing them live. Ultimately, Another Animal is in a unique place for me as a fan. For one, because I'm a fan, I'm obviously always up for them to reunite, and I would gladly support them in any way I could, should they do so. However, I can't deny the success of Godsmack. Though I'd much rather Another Animal be a band, one has to consider the livelihoods of Rambola, Merrill, and Larkin. Much like other failed bands I love, notably Tantric and Army of Anyone, if the band is a higher burden to maintain than to end, I cannot expect the members to continue solely to fulfill my selfish wishes as a fan. Ideally, there would be cult support for Another Animal, but I legitimately have trouble meeting any fans of the band online, much less in person. The last major acknowledgement of the band came from Loudwire's article on 10 bad supergroups, which I found to be utter nonsense and a cheap way of getting the list of 10 bands due to Another Animal's obscurity. To conclude, I feel as though Another Animal's hopes for a future can best be summed up by an answer Richard Patrick gave to a fan who asked him if there would be a second Army of Anyone record. Yeah, when people go out and buy the first one.